I almost hit it, and I did. Kind of a bad way to start, but it is what it is. I want to say welcome back because no one's been back.
Well, I'm here.
Hello, Shop Mom's here. I'm here, and I know we're waiting for people to come in, but I'm talking to the people that already may have connected. I know that first it started off a little bit crazy. It's because I am a little bit crazy. So, getting the iPad set up. I should have been set up already. Someone tell me how the view is doing.
It's good.
Shop Mom says it's good. I'm trying to get to here so I can read your questions. Because today is question and answer day.
Pat Cassidy's here, Lon is here, Bob is here, Venom's here.
Oh, hold on, people. Don't go away.
You can hear me.
Mm-hmm.
That's all that matters.
We are. Mm-hmm. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
All right, now we have. Excuse the late presence. I'm the one that's late today. Sorry, I didn't have Shop Mom mic'd up. I didn't have anything going on. What's the deal? Happy New Year. Is this what the New Year is all about? It's been this kind of way. Who are you calling away? I can't even find my YouTube channel. Has anybody else found my YouTube channel?
Yes, other people have found your YouTube channel.
All
Wade
right.
is here, Pat Cassidy's here, Bob Miller's here, Lawnmower's here, Venom is here, Terry's here. Hi, Terry.
Hi, Terry. Is any?
Scott's here. Hi, Scott. Thanks for the nuts.
Yes, thanks for the nut, Scott. I'm doing it.
And Infamy is here.
And Infamy is here.
He's here for the scoop on the 4.3.
Which is how we're starting out. We're starting out right at 4.3 because that was a question asked from before. And I do ask people, ask questions, and it doesn't mean I'm not going to answer them, but at least now we're starting right now, except I wasn't quite prepared a little bit, but that is what we're starting on. It's what's called the dry January, right? But Terry's in the room. So, because to honor my brother Terry, I already broke down. This is the first of
And
any.
David Johnson is here. Hi, David. Hope the wife is okay. And while Danny's pouring that, let's say hi to Shay Ribster. And yes, Shay, I knew that's how you'd say your name. And Ollie is here. You know what? Thanks, you guys, for joining us. Happy New Year to everybody, or as we like to say, Solis Navidad.
Yes, Solis Navidad.
Oh, Solis Año Nuevo. Es Solis Año Nuevo. ¿Qué pensé? I'm sorry, guys. I slip into my Spanish sometimes.
I'm looking for I won't find it now. I'll find it. It's right here. Stashed. Anyway, my cool new mug.
It's right behind you. The one from Terry, the one from Scott.
Oh, I accidentally hit it for Scott. The Terry one. I have Terry one. I have another Terry one, and we have a new one. I wanted to just.
CEO's here. Terry says dry January is a made-up holiday.
It is now because I just broke down, and I wanted to break down and pull this bad dude out. And when I opened this up, it's like pretty cool because it comes with tools. And I'm like, what drink comes with tools? A drink with tools, and it even comes with New Allen. This is bad to the bone. I should have broke this out. Today has been something else, but I wanted to say thank you, and thank you. And I thought it was lost for a second, and no, it's just hidden by this.
Okay, but we're gonna get right down to business.
We're getting right down to business. Whew. I'm all crooked over here, but no one's saying anything, so I guess I'm straight. I'm looking at. I'll just lean a little bit. If that's it. We're talking about the 4.3 right off the bat, just gonna get, and we're already in, well, I don't know how many minutes in, and we haven't talked about anything. All right, it's 4 minutes in, we haven't talked about anything. I apologize to anybody coming in new. The 4.3 is an awesome engine. I particularly do like it. What can I say about the 4.3? We're building a new hot vapor engine, which is a half of a 4.3. So Smokey built a 3-cylinder Buick. There it is right there. We're doing a 3-cylinder GM. So it is a take on his 3-cylinder Buick Hot Vapor. We're doing a modern 3-cylinder, and I'm using that platform, the 4.3. I like that platform. It's basically a V8 Chevy 4-inch bore, 3.4-inch stroke, all goodness to it. And so some of the questions have been, why isn't it more used more often? What's the deal with that it's not being used? And it's gone through a lot of different years, from carbureted to fuel injected to actually direct port fuel injection. My personal opinion, I've owned a few, owned a half-ton Chevy with one, all S10. Anyway, my personal view. For whatever reason, it just doesn't really get that much better gas mileage. I'm all mumbling that up. It doesn't get that great of gas mileage, as opposed to if I'm gonna have a V8 and I get real close to a V8 gas mileage, give me the V8. So that's what I think is kind of like why I think is we don't do more of them and stuff, is because it weighs almost the same. It has the two front cylinders cut off, so it is a little bit shorter, a little bit less weight, but you're still basically slinging around the same kind of weight, 4-inch bore, 3.4-inch stroke, for the roughly the same gas mileage as the Chevy V8. So that's why I just generally go to the Chevy V8. I won't anymore buy a truck. Like I said, it didn't really perform that much different. I might as well have a V8 in there if I'm going to get that kind of gas mileage.
Because there's no substitute for cubic inches.
There's no substitute for cubic inches. Well said, Shop Mom, Elaine. All right, so that's my take on the 4.3. But we're building, like I said, it's a good proven platform. It's real robust. We wouldn't be using it for the hot vapor engine if it couldn't handle. So you can probably, I've seen them turbocharged. I mean, you can do a lot to them. Okay, that's my 4.3 take on it. David Johnson says the 4.3 NASCAR engines were nuts. Yes. That's a cool looking mug. It is. I still have the old OG here. How's everybody enjoyed your New Year? Hasn't it been a weird New Year? Kind of weird in a bunch of senses. I don't know.
I don't know that it's been a weird New Year, but amongst the other shop owners that I have spoken with, apparently a lot of people waited until after the first of the year to drop their stuff off. Don't know what that's about, but we have been slammed.
Everybody, yes, we have been slammed. It's like for business, this is awesome. I mean, this is not the time to be getting out of machine work. I wanted to end the last part of this live stream. We're only going to go an hour and just talk about why aren't people getting into this industry. We'll leave that alone for a while. We maybe don't get to it. I kind of thought if we get stagnant, I would like to talk about and it doesn't have to be the younger people. I mean, people getting out of the military. Why aren't you getting into this field? We will get into that later. The next question, because we did have questions that I asked earlier, so that we would have a little bit of stuff to talk about while this was a dead stagnant time, because this is also I leave them on as videos that people can watch later on. So the start that I did today, that's probably not a good thing. I should drop this video, edit it, and then restart it again. But me, I just basically leave them out there unedited.
Let's take note of the comment here about Merc Cruisers running the 4.3. That is something that we discussed earlier.
And we were my son was here, and he's got a boat with a Merc Cruiser. In fact, I believe they're still in the Merc Cruiser world. If you have one, if you want to build one or put one in a vehicle, Merc Cruiser has been still developing and still use this, and I believe it's 290 horse. There's a bunch of different versions of it, but I believe one of the most advanced versions, I think it's a 290 horse V6. But you could go to Merc Cruiser and get the Merc Cruiser engine. A boat engine, if it's going to get used in a boat, what's the difference from a boat engine to a car engine? A boat engine is a little bit looser clearances in the bore. Why? It's because you can't get a boat engine up to 210 degrees. Efficiency is get the engine hot. Everything nowadays is a minimum of 210 or more, because we want to build up a lot of heat so that we can be efficient and burn fuel, all the fuel. In a lake or a boat, for the majority of boats, not every, and I'm talking to people from all over the world, so I'm going by right here, but the majority of boats take in lake water or for fresh water, and the water is 70. We don't get 100 200 degree water in the lake. So the block is always super cold, but yet the pistons are getting hot because of the combustion process. So the piston expands, and generally, this is what happens when you take a car engine and you put it in your boat and you wonder why it blew up the first time you went out to the lake. Is the clearance is on there. So a loose engine will make a perfect boat motor because, like I said, the block never expands. And I say never. It should be not much. It does expand, but in the gist of what we're talking about, it stays really cold because it's always doing lake water. Now, like I always say, never, don't, whatever. If you have a closed cooling system, which offshore boats, anything that goes into salt water, normally has a closed loop system. Not all, race boats. My Donzi was made for the salt water. It doesn't have a closed loop system. So don't ever use when I say never, don't, or all, don't, whatever. Disclaimer. If you have a closed loop system, what that means is there's a radiator, a heat exchanger. And instead of having air go through it like a car, there's water going through it. So what they do is they put essentially a radiator, heat exchanger, and the engine's coolant is going through this heat exchanger. Instead of air going through it, they take the seawater and they run it through the other side to cool it off. So this heat exchanger, instead of having air cooled, is water cooled, water by water, but seawater. So the engine never ever gets seawater in the engine, which is awesome because you don't get corrosion. Also, you can control engine temperature with thermostats just like you would anything else. Okay, so but Merc Cruisers, yes, 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 yes. If you don't have one and you want to do the V6, just buy a Merc Cruiser. Buy a boat that's all messed up, rotted, and just take the motor out of it, or buy you a brand new Merc Cruiser a crate motor. They're real good. There's nothing wrong with the motor. Okay, or nothing wrong with the engine.
You have someone here from Poland.
From Poland.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
I'll drink to that.
I think is how it said, and has a question. What 5/16 by 18 ARP bolts do I need for flywheel in an L36 T5 Camaro? Now, if you were a bolt expert, I would say that's a very good question. I appreciate the fact that the question was asked, but I should probably point out to people that we don't ask Danny those questions. We ask me those questions.
You would ask Shotman the question, he'd probably give you the part number. The beauty thing about the ARP bolts is even if there's not a bolt, we needed some bolts for an engine that we just finished up today, and I needed some specific bolts. You can just call up the tech line, tell them what you need, and they will pull bolts they make bolts for everything. So they may not have it in a kit. In this particular instance, we weren't going to do a windage tray because the oil pan had a windage tray in it. Didn't care for that particular pan after it came in. We mocked it up. So I changed pans. And then we ended up going through a different pan. So we had already purchased a kit that didn't have the extended studs on it. So you can call ARP and say, look, I already have this kit. I wasn't going to have a windage tray. Now I'm going to have a windage tray. What do I need about those longer studs? Can you just sell me those in the kit that I would have normally got if I ordered the windage tray? So ARP will have that bolt for you. Also, if you're using an ARP, it's a 5/16 by 18. It's a little bitty dude. ARP bolts makes a lot of different bolts. So only because you think I'm not talking about you personally, but people, all ARP bolts aren't the same grade. They're made specifically for what they're used for. Like I would not use an ARP stainless bolt because you would think, well, the stainless bolt's better than a regular bolt. It's actually softer. So just contact ARP. It's not talk to them whenever I have a question because I ain't an engineer. Didn't go to engineering school. Figure this out. But we want to pull a bolt is like a rubber band. So it is elastic. So we want to stretch the bolt so that we can have clamping force on a part. Overstretch the bolt, and the bolt gives it up. It gave it away. Okay, understretch the bolt, you didn't have the right clamping force. So even getting an ARP bolt and changing the torque from what they designed that bolt to be, you may not be stretching it correctly, and it could come loose on you. So a 5/16 little bolt, I would just call ARP. If it was me, I'd call ARP. I take that back. Shopmom calls ARP, gets them online, gets the right person, and then asks me to come to the phone so that I can ask. And actually, she will even ask this question. Like you said, you're asking the wrong person.
Because this question originated overseas, they are very responsive to email. So you can go to their website. There is a form there that you can fill out, and they will respond to any email inquiries.
And if they don't, or if you have difficulties, you've made it to our page, just send a message to shopmom, here's the address, at gmail.com. If you can't, um, a simple boat from Poland, maybe the phone, all of the things could mean that it's not, cost effective. I don't want to say that call shop mom, let her do the legwork for you. I shouldn't say that, but she does it for all many different people. So if you're having difficulties and whatever, contacting them or whatever, I'm sure that she can help you find the bolt that you need for that. Like I said, at the 5/16 by 18, I would use an ARP bolt. I wouldn't use one of the stainless bolts, and they make even different versions of their black bolt depending on what we need. So a lot of times I'll call, tell them what we need. She'll call, tell them what we need. When I get to the phone, I express what I think is the right material and the right bolt. But I say, but you tell me, you're the boat people. And we consult, and sometimes it's just a matter of either adding a few more pounds of torque or less. They may make the bolt that wasn't used for this application, but they may make a bolt that can be used for this application. One of the my friends on Instagram that follow, Engine Builder, he just had ARP making Ford 302 cam bolts, and he's doing a washer setup. So he just called them up, told them what they needed, what he needed, and they made a small batch of bolts for him. So they can take care of whatever you need. If you have a problem, I'm gonna refer back to Shop Mom can help you out.
Okay, a couple of things. David Johnson wants to know if in twin motors, didn't they have one that runs in reverse? Before you answer that, Chip Dunham is here, says he loves the channel. Have a 6.0, is scratch lifter boards, will it hurt anything? Love your common sense on things. Shay Ribster says, I think I'm going back to my machinist, 383, very bottom of all bores, piston skirts won't pass through. Worst one is 6 thousandths tighter than the rest of the bore. Lewis Brooks is here, Happy New Year.
I got an answer for Lewis.
Bought some synthetic 3 years ago. Does oil expire? Should he throw it out? Although Lon answered that one.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to the first one because I see him here. Corrosion kills them. Yes, twin motors. Yes, if there's twin motors, especially in offshore boats, or bigger, the bigger the boats get, they generally have twin motors, twin engines, twin motors. I don't know what a boat especially calls them. And the reason is if you're going offshore real far away and an engine goes out, you have a way to get back. Also, have you ever tried to turn a big boat around in a tight space with a single engine? So twin engine. And generally you do have a left rotation and a right rotation engine because of the props. You want to keep it going straight. So you're not going to have twin engines and both turning the prop the same way. Very good. So actually Dave Johnson wasn't he the one that answered that one in twin
motors?
It was lawnmower. It was lawnmower. Okay, well lawnmower. Thank you, lawnmower. That is correct. The 6.0 scratch on the lifter bore. A scratch on the lifter bore isn't going to hurt anything if it's a scratch. As long as it's not deep enough. And you think, okay, well, how do I know if the scratch is going to be deep enough? It has to be pretty deep to bleed off, to bleed off some oil pressure on the bores. We actually used to groove the lifter bores back in the day, and I think it was Iski had a lifter with a little finger on it. And you actually had a tool, and you just hammered that dude in the lifter bore, and you put a groove in the lifter bore, and that actually kept the lifter from rotating in a rotor lifter. It's a little bit different on a solid because we would actually restrict the oil to the lifter bores because it's a solid, not a hydraulic. You can't do that to a hydraulic. But don't be alarmed of a scratch in a lifter bore. Don't be alarmed about that. If it's a groove, it's a little bit different. Scratch, not to worry. That was the scratch in the lifter bore. And I'm thinking of going back to my machinist 383, the bottom of all the bores. Piston skirts won't pass through. The worst one is 6 thousand. If it's 6/10, in my world, in my realm, I'm like, but 6/10 is nothing. So is it 0.006 or 0.0006? 6 thousandths. What were they using? A ruler? They were using a wood ruler because that's a lot. There ain't no way that's gonna fly. So you're probably going to have to go to the next oversized bore to fix unless it happens to be just 6 tight, and you can hone that. And that would even be difficult because it's tough to hone a taper. Not impossible. Do it all the time. but you really takes an art, and unless you have one of these $100,000 homes that has a digital screen that you sit there and look at, and it'll sit there and work the bottom. It'll work the bottom until it gets it back big. I don't have one of those. It's an analog, so it's a power stroke hone, but I'll actually have to work the bottom. Sometimes if it's only a certain spot, I'll take a set of stones and cut the top half off. So I can only work that spot at the bottom. It's difficult, not impossible. There's no reason in the world, no way, there's nothing that I could even conceive of. It's okay to have 6,000 taper in a bore. That there's something went wrong. Generally, the bottoms of the bores get bigger, not tighter, and the reason is someone who doesn't keep up with their boring bar and their bits. If the bit gets worn out, the bit that's cutting it, or I like to call it ripping the cylinder, because it's a bit that's just going there and ripping the metal out. It's spinning and going down slowly, and it looks nice in a microscope or even real close. It's pretty rough. In that process, the bit will heat up. The duller the bit gets hotter. Metal expands as it gets hot. So as it's going down, generally, I can always tell in a shop where there's my mom's shop, we had 18 employees. It's a different thing. We can see things and we can know, hey, time to change the bits, time to dress the bits. If you don't dress a bit, I have an older boring bar that you actually have to dress the bits. I've modernized it and put a titanium bit in it. But there's an art to dressing the bit. There's multi-angles on it. And if you don't dress the bit right, you can actually heat up a bore really quick. So as it's boring, it heats up and it gets bigger. So as you're going down, if you notice that your bottom of the bores are getting big, it's the bits getting hot and expanding because it's dull. So a dull bit cuts more. It's kind of weird. You'll hurt yourself more with the dull knife. Have you heard that? Okay. Terry, are you still with me, Terry?
Yes,
RC, you there?
Terry is here.
Nudge Terry, wake him up for me. Here we go, Terry. Here we go. It's another one.
That's funny. So, Shea or Ripster, suggestion for ring gap for sealed power Molly rings or sealed power on sealed power hyper-eutectic pistons. I can't find specs anywhere for either of them. I got pre-gapped rings by accident, top rings already at 24,000.
Okay. Ring end gap, if you watch my videos, there's no answer because there is no answer. Sorry. Oh, there you go. You're correct. No, I don't know. I can give suggestions, but people don't even want to do that because there's so many variables to ring end gap. What I suggest, what brand ring did you get, is call the manufacturer and give them specifics, and they can give you a thing. What brand of ring? Can we get what brand of ring? And while we're getting what brand of ring, Lewis, Happy New Year. We've been on the phone and on the phone trying to get some connecting rods. And as of right now, unless the phone rings right now, we're waiting for a phone call back. I don't know, is because we're just pushing, and we didn't get the standard, it's on the way. But just a little update on Lewis Brooks connector rod and Happy New Year. Back to the ring thing. Okay, what engine are we working on? Did suggestions ring end gap for seal power Molly rings, love them, and I could run to the back right now, and I actually keep a lot of the sheets that come with in the rings, and throughout the years I have them, and ring end gaps have changed from back in the day, which for a long time the top ring was always wider than the second ring, and then a few years back they went and they flipped it up. The second ring was wider than the top ring. Didn't make any sense to me. I didn't go to engineering school. I didn't, because what makes sense to me is there's more heat on the top ring than the second ring. Probably pretty close to each other. Go to Mall. If you watched any of the videos I shot at SEMA, they got pistons, connecting rods with probes and sensors in them and Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. And while it's running, they're logging the temperatures in the piston all the way down. There's little probes. Man, don't get me going on the sophistication of that. Thank you, Terry. Don't hit the like and subscribe. Tell your buds, tell your friends. All right, going back to the rings. So they've changed. So early seal power stuff. Let's go with the Hastings or anybody. I want to stick with seal power because I love seal power. They did change Total Seal as well. I love Total Seal as well, and they changed the second ring. I don't know if you want to know why they changed the gaps. I don't even get everybody all sidetracked on, because I can go on ring and gap for a while.
Yes, he can.
Seal power ring gap. Here you go. You're adding a little more twist to it, and you're not adding, but for everybody else who's listening wants to know, why can't you just answer a darn question? Because the piston makes a difference. Even not all hyperprotective pistons are the same. What year were these pistons? And I'd have to get into explaining, and I will a little bit, because you asked the question, and I don't want to know that I'm just not just throwing out stupid stuff. But these are the things that are variables that are going to be very important. Hyperprotective piston. People are going, I don't understand what that means. Okay, we back in the day had a steel piston. Forget that. Smoking unit came around. He wasn't the only one, but we modernized the piston, and they're aluminum. And then we started having different alloys of aluminum. But most commonly, we had a cast piston, and we had a forged piston. Okay, we can talk about castings and forgings, but the material that goes in them, a cast piston, they pour just like a mold, and they break it loose, and there's your piston. A forging is stamped out of some aluminum. They stamp it into the shape of a piston, put it in a lathe, and machine it. Okay, that's a cast, that's a forge. But the differences are, the forged piston can take a lot more abuse. It's a forged piston. It can handle heat better. It can handle boost better. But a forged piston, they found that it expands way more than a cast piston. So in general, please, in general, a cast piston, depending on the year, a cast piston, thanks for that. I can't even see that far. I'm not going to stop, but thank you for that. Shop Mom will tell me who it is just a little bit. A cast piston, generally about 1.5 clearance. Clearance, because that's all it expands. This is general, because it depends on all the different manufacturers. But 80, 90%, I want to say 80 because it's 80, 90%, is that a word? About 1.5, and you're not going to be wrong in that general. A forged piston.
Real quick, I got to say hi to our buddy Sean from Hylamar. He's here.
Sean from Hylamar. Sean, we love you. Where you been?
Yeah,
come and say hi.
Okay, and then there was, before you get any further,
yes.
Hurton's here. Hurton wanted to know, which is better, forged or cast?
Well, I'm going to keep going, because Sean, if you don't know, it's Hylamar. You know me. Everything I build has Hylamar on it, and you've seen everything. If you want the real deal, you get Hylamar. If you're good, everybody imitates you. I'm going to leave it at that. Okay, so back to the pistons. Cast piston expands 1.5. A forged piston expands 5. And these are just general back in the day numbers. And even still some that do it like that. Okay, a forged piston holds more. It holds boost. It'll take detonation. I'm not saying that detonation ain't gonna break a ringland, but it'll be a lot of it. It'll take boost, it'll take heat, it'll take all of these. But you need 5,000 clearance, because as it gets hot, so we're gonna have the same operating temperature, the engine running at 210 degrees. When the 5,000 piston expands at 210 degrees, it only has 0.5 clearance. 1.5 piston cast, 210 degrees, has 0.5 clearance. So what do we get? The cast piston only expands 1,000. The forged piston expanding 4.5. Okay? So once we leave that piston looser, that doesn't mean when it's running down the road that it's running all but loose and slappy. Stop it. I'm sorry I used that. That's not right. We don't need to go there. Okay, so I'm not judging. I just don't go down that road. But there you go. All right, so they're both running at the same clearance when they're up at operating temperatures. But you had piston slap when it was cold. A race motor, they don't care. They fire it up in the pits. They let it warm up a little bit. Once it gets up at operating temperatures, it expands. Now you can hit it. Don't rev a race motor up, start hitting it. Indy Motors, Toyota, and everybody else has a big machine that pumps hot oil in the engine. If you were to start an Indy motor up cold, it would grenade starting it. So they actually pump hot oil in the engine, get it up to temperature before they even ignite that motor off. All right, now we know. What's better? A forged piston. Except if you want piston slap or noise. Because it is going to be a little bit noisier starting up when you first fire it up. Then it was Cadillac who came up you know, maybe it's going to be no, Danny. It was some guy 5 years before Cadillac, whatever. Cadillac was the one that first started using it. I've spoken to L. Bell, who was the engineer. Then he went over to Keith's Black Pistons. But anyway, they want it quiet. A Cadillac doesn't want to hear. Cadillac's always worked on window seals, everything. They want a totally smooth and quiet engine. So they don't want to hear an engine, even at a 1,500 clearance, having any kind of noise. So to keep the noise quieter, boom, invent hyper-eutectic. What is a hyper-eutectic piston? It is as strong as a forged piston and as tight or tighter than a cast piston. Okay, so the aluminum that's in it, they put a lot more silicon in it, and depending on the amount of silicon on all these pistons, that's what, I don't want to say that's what controls, but that's what we look at. Even on a forged piston, depending on the alloy, they're going to expand differently, the amount of silicon in the piston. So a hyper-eutectic piston is the best of all the worlds. It can be, and I don't recommend anybody do, especially in Texas, as tight as a 0.5 clearance, installed clearance, cold. We don't do them that tight. This is Texas. But, so it can be that tight, and it doesn't expand very much at all. You can run, like I say, the book says, you know, 0.5 clearance, 1,000 clearance. It is as strong as a forged piston, but it is even tighter than a cast piston. So you're going, well, why are we using anything else? Because when, not going to use the brand name KB piston, when they first started coming out, they didn't have the recipe just right, and they were too brittle. And disclaimer, please don't, you know, I've been in it for a long time, so I'm going back when they first came out. Okay, do your own research, find out, you know, that Danny's telling you right, but I don't want to hear it. I do want to hear it, sorry. All right, so what it is that they were so strong, just like a forged piston. Have you ever taken a plate? You can, well, Terry can't say anything because RC right next to him. Your wife's in the room, say no, never. A ceramic plate, and put it on the counter, touched it on something, and it just shattered into 1,000,000 pieces. That's the early hyper-eutectic pistons. They were brittle. I'm talking about if you just had any kind of detonation in a tuning, it pinged one time, you were done. You had a connecting rod and a pin in your cylinder. Now, some of y'all that have been doing it for a long time go, oh my God, I've seen that before. I've seen an engine, we pulled it apart, we don't know what happened, and there's a rod and a pin in the bore. And it beat the bore all up because there's nothing there. And there's not one piece of piston. It's all in the pan in a pieces about this big. It shattered because they were too brittle. So then they had a little learning curve. Unfortunately, y'all, the public, paid for this, and they changed and pulled some silicon out and worked with the recipe. Now, hyper-eutectic pistons are pretty badass. I still will either go to a forged or a cast, you know, for the 99.5% of the time. They're getting better. They're getting better. I just don't like, oh, my low battery. What's up with that? Should I get a battery charger shop, Mom?
Yes.
So there you go. There's all the differences. But going back, in my phone freeze, let me go ahead and hit OK.
Oh yeah, it did.
It did. Let me.
You stopped here.
I'm gonna hit. Oh, y'all still with me? Hang in there. Can you hear me? The charger?
I don't know which charger works. I have mine from my iPad.
Or I just let it go.
I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, take that.
All right. Are y'all still with me, people?
I don't have it in.
All right. I don't know if people are with me. If I'm dying or leave it alone. Somehow we managed to.
Forgot to charge your phone.
Talk to people. They're still there. I don't have anything.
Hold on.
Okay. Well, we're going to go till the phone dies. I tried to get a charger, but I somehow didn't manage to charge up the phone. Bear with me. I am sorry.
We're probably just going to have to cut it short.
We're going to have to cut it short. But I want to answer the thing. I'm going to go back and stay focused. I'm going to stay focused on the hyper-eutectic piston. And the reason we're talking about this is why. Ring end gap. I wasn't just trying to get all over the place. The hyper-eutectic piston, the top of the piston, because it's more like a forged and it's so brittle, it holds in a lot of heat. which is good for efficiency. We don't want the heat to expand, go down the cylinders, and go. Heat is energy. Remember this. Heat is energy. So we want the heat in the cylinder to burn all the fuel. So it's a very good piston for that reason. Let me go ahead and let me plug in. Hold your thing. Get yourself something to drink. I'm still here. The phone's gonna shake a little bit. Got mom to the rescue. All right. I think we're back. We might be okay. Shot mom saved the day as always. I'm seeing myself come back in. I apologize, people. It's a heck of a January, ain't it? I should be prepared. I'm acting like an amateur here. All right, but I build engines, so that's all that. All right, so a hyper-eutectic piston. Fast forward, and the top of the piston gets a lot hotter. And depending on your piston, does your piston have a groove in between the top ring and the second ring? Normally the top and the second ring are pretty close together. The hyper-eutectic pistons, they actually went and they split them up and they put a groove in the middle, kind of a little cut in the middle, and they're further apart. And that is because of the heat. Those particular, you want a lot more clearance on the top ring. So don't be scared of 24, and 24 isn't bad. I still don't know what size bore it is. Generally, non-boosted, naturally aspirated. I hate giving out numbers because there's so many variables. I mean, every variable changes things a lot. But normally, old school was 4 thousandths per inch. Okay, so a 4-inch bore, 4 thousandths per inch. You're done. 16 to 18. At 16. As you start going to, if it's used for towing, go to 4.5. If it's used for circle track towing or endurance, high performance, like I said, 4.5. You start putting more load on it, you go to 6. I'm going 0.006 times the bore. You can go all the way to 6.5. It depends. The more boost and heat you have in the cylinder, the wider the end gap. You will most definitely destroy an engine using a hyper-eutectic piston and not opening up your top ring end gap. But I want to say it depends on which piston you have. So call the piston manufacturer, tell them what ring you're using and what piston you're using, and they'll tell you the formula for the ring end gap. By the formula, it's either 4 thousandths, 4.5, 5. They'll give you that number that you times by your bore. All right, that's why, you know, ring end gap, there's so many variables. If it's boosted, naturally aspirated, I mean, there's so many variables. Okay, I saw a bunch of stuff, and I don't want to not get Bob's here. Hey, Bob. Hurton's here. I don't know. I'm so confused because
Lewis Brooks made a it's an interesting question.
Yes.
Why don't the British build cell phones? They have not figured out how to make them leak oil.
Okay.
Get it? Why don't the British build cell phones? They haven't figured out how to make them leak oil.
Oh, it's a joke. It's actually a good joke. It's like it's like a Jaguar joke.
Yeah.
You know when a Jag stops leaking when a Jag stops leaking oil, when there's no more oil in it.
When there's no more.
It doesn't matter. And a Jag, been there, done that, and a lot of times, they were machined still by hand and stuff. So I used to think, God, the machining is really bad. Machining wasn't all that bad. They're just porous castings. It's like the early Harley Davidsons. They'll just seep oil through the case. So it's like a sponge, because a cast aluminum case were real porous, and oil actually just seep through. It just leaked like a ton of biscuits. Okay. It's all over Scotland. I don't know what I'm missing. What am I missing? Somebody shot my...
Hurton wants to know if Sarah and Tuned is sending you an engine to build. I don't know, but that would be very cool. We love her.
Mm-hmm.
And Hurton, thank you so much. We have missed you, buddy. We really have. By the way, Brian made it. And for those of you who do not know, we all sign off Peace and Assembly Greece because of Brian, who is not on here as Brian. He's on here as... I can never remember his initials because I should and I don't. SWRXS.
But that's where Peace and Assembly Greece comes in. And I actually love that because we end all our live streams with that. But now we started seeing it in Faye's live streams. We started seeing it other places. I think it's gonna just it's a perfect way to end. We're not saying peace and the 7 degrees yet. John Wilburn, thank you so much. Happy New Year, Sean.
And Lewis Brooks wants to talk about blowers.
Oh, I do. I knew you would. Well, I don't know you would. We're still on that.
Root?
I always still, it's a roots blower, and I always still look, anytime I see one, I still look for you. I still look and see, we're going to find you one, because I know you're going there eventually anyway. But I did want to, I just had, David Johnson asked a question earlier.
Oh, about the 351 oil pan?
Yes, for the show. And I think that's a good thing. That's why I started, even Shaman told me, get up earlier and post this stuff on so that we can get some questions ahead of time so that we don't lose you in the chat. I love the 351 Cleveland, and golly, I can go on just like that ring and gap on 351 Cleveland. As John Hamilton says, he's the Hamilton brothers, John and Tom Hamilton. If you cut them, it's going to be just blue blood. Sorry, it's all there's to it. If you don't, huh?
It's
Ford blue. Well, it's
not
Ford
just
blue, not just
blue.
you know. So and like John says, I've learned on the Cleveland as I was a kid, helping out someone on a circle track program, and we did the machine work and went out, and the weekend he comes back on Monday with the burn up crank and rods and everything, and then we did the machine work wrong. Whoa, but like my uncle always said, only one man walked on water. It's not us. So we ended up doing all the machine work again. This time, documented everything to the thing. It was just regular machine work. We didn't know it was a race motor, but it was right. Did it again. Explained to him, look, before you pick up this crank, if the rods are gone and all this, he takes it, assembles it, brings, go out there and races, and he comes back in on a Monday again. Help. I don't know. And that's like, we knew he wasn't what we were doing, but now he's, well, what did I do wrong? Or it has to be something you did wrong. You did it again. And I don't like where I got to find the problem to clear myself. In other words, but that's what ends up happening. I got to show you what it is. So now it's like, you know what? Bring everything back. We're going to do it. Let me assemble the engine. Let me assemble the engine to see what's going on. Okay. Well, the problem with the 351 Cleveland is the oiling system. It was such a bad oiling system that LS copied it. I'll wait to see the responses I hear about that. So it's not a proprietary oiling system. It oils on one side, then go. It's just a terrible oiling system. So before I'm going to build it now, I'm going to ask people way smarter than me. So John and Tom Hamilton are Ford. I don't know if y'all know JBA headers, but John used to do all the machine work for JBA headers out of California till he started working for my parents. And then he sold all that to them, the machine shop to them, and started working for my parents 30 some years ago, whatever. So I asked John, now I'm getting involved, and I'm going to do this motor. Give me some of the tips of why this is happening. So oil problems, that's what it is. So you got to go ahead, and if you're not building a motor, you can't really do some of these, but we enlarge all of the passages from the oil filter into the block, enlarge them, radius them, the ones to the mains. You want to get as much oil as you can to it, and special oil pan that Tom Hamilton actually was building at the time, a custom pan. You want a lot of oil, and I don't necessarily always go to extreme oil pressure because, like Smokey Unix says, you're just taking away horsepower. You cannot compress the liquid. So once you start getting 60, 70, 80 pounds of oil pressure, you're taking horsepower. It's actually like a dyno slowing down your motor because it ain't going to compress the liquid. So you're putting a lot of load on parts and heat that's not necessary. But there's never an answer that I can answer to just use this for every engine. The Ford 351 Cleveland is an example of that dude right there. You better have, like John says, if you ain't got 70 psi oil pressure at idle, don't pull it off the trailer. Okay, so I bought a pan from Tom. It was a bigger pan with the windages, keeping the oil where it needs to be in the pan. We did the modifications to the block, cranked up the oil pressure with a high volume, had 70 pounds oil pressure, never had a problem ever again. In fact, we were booted from the track several times because no one could keep up with this Ford. It was a Ford 351 Cleveland 4-barrel. If you know the 4V head, it's a dog. It is a dog. It's a port about this big, and it's a dog on the street. It was made for NASCAR. So on the circle track, man, that thing would get up and just leave everybody. Now, it was real heavy, Mustang, a 71, 72 Mustang, real heavy nose, and he couldn't drive worth a damn, so they would catch up to him around the turn. But he'd go in a straightaway, and all you heard was those 4-barrel. You didn't hear one Chevy at all, and it just annihilated everybody. And then we can go to those stories of why we got kicked. Everybody back in the day could run a Holly. If a Ford put a Holly on an engine, you were allowed to do that. After this, they brought rules and all, they changed it and stuff, and that motor never had a Holly in it. Well, that Camaro never had a Holly in it either. The one that they were running, the combination, the Monte Carlo, whatever they were doing, and they made us take the Holly off. You could go ahead and keep tonight's win, but the Holly's coming off. You got to put a Motorcraft carburetor on it. That's what had on it. And we went on and on, kept on spanking their ass. I love the 351 Cleveland. Can I say that, spanking their ass? I don't know, because it could be a good way or a bad way. I don't know. We don't necessarily, only because I don't go down that road doesn't mean you can't. All right.
Okay, so there's a number of other comments. First of all, before I get to Griff, because he's got a freshly assembled Ford 390, which requires about 80 foot-pounds to rotate. Is that normal? He used Lucas assembly grease on all the bearing surfaces. Do not answer that one yet. DJ has a couple of questions about a carbureted flatty. What's the ring gap? And also, are zinc additives necessary?
Well, on a carbureted flat, you use a 4 thousandths per inch of the bore. You got a 312 bore, whatever. Shop Mom can do the math for you. She does all my math for me. But useful if it's naturally aspirated, and a cast ring. And I hate giving these numbers up because I don't know are you running a cast ring? Are you running a cast moly ring? Are you running a chrome ring? What's your size of your bore? Are you running a forged piston? Are you running a cast piston? There's just too many. But in general, most flatheads, unless you put in a lot of exotic parts, 4 thousandths per inch of bore, but it's in general. There's too many specifics, like I just finished explaining on the type of material. The flathead we're doing for Lewis Brooks has a forged JE piston. So
probably the best way to say it is there's not a one-size-fits-all answer.
And I say, and they're probably thinking, Danny, why do you keep saying that? I say, call the manufacturer. That's what Mall has no problem. They would actually prefer a call before you made a mistake than call afterwards and say why did this happen. If you're going to make a call and you didn't bother to call before, don't call after and say why did it happen. Take the time and call and say, this is the situation I have and I'm at a roadblock. I'm getting this discrepancy from Billy is telling me this, and I always pick on Billy, and I'm not picking on Billy. And then Joe's telling me this, and my book is saying this, but I found a bunch of old stuff in hot rod magazines, and they're saying this. Those rings that you bought, unless you bought them at a swap meet, or they've been on the shelf for a long time, aren't that old material. Is it a ductile iron ring? Is it a cast iron ring? Is it a cast and moly? People think that a moly ring is all moly. No, it's not. It's a cast ring with a moly laid in the ring itself. So just a moly coating. It's an embedded ring with moly. So the ring material is very, very important. Also as naturally aspirated or whatever. But the ring material and piston material are very important. If I had an ignition cut out in 2-step flame spitting tuned on the engine, does it damage the ring? I hate 2-step. Anytime that you're killing an engine firing, it's violent. I see where you have to do it. But if you have forged internals, it shouldn't hurt anything at all. Don't run lean. Scotland is lovely, but maybe not in January. Okay, am I missing anything, Shop Mom?
Remember there was a question from Griff about his freshly assembled Ford 390, which requires 80 foot-pounds to rotate. Is that normal? He used Lucas assembly lube on all the bearing surfaces. Okay,
it's a 390 Ford FE, which we know it's a 390 Ford FE. Thank you, Hurton. I just saw that Hurton.
Yes, that was a little bit ago.
I know. I'm just not catching up and listening and trying to answer
and talking
everybody.
all at the same time. This is called multitasking.
I'm multitasking. Okay, back to the Ford FE. Early model stuff '68 or even early, man, when you put that stuff together, they had Babbitt bearings. Everything was different back in the day. I remember back in the day, way back in the day, as a little kid. Have I seen a chain strapped to a vehicle being towed down the street and then pop the clutch because it's that tight? Flathead had his, anything with a Babbitt bearing. That shouldn't be at all what's happening now. In fact, I can generally turn an engine over with the 3/8 ratchet until we start putting the rockers on and the valve springs. And you gotta figure valve springs and figure an average like a performance little Camaro with a 100-pound valve spring, 100 pounds when the valve's closed. As it opens, it's a progressive rate. Actually, it's not a beehive. It's not progressive, but it does increase and go up. So think about it. Times 16. So as you start putting the rockers on, it does start getting. But that's why I like to feel that what I'm feeling, the hardness, was after I put the springs on. Before that, especially nowadays, man, the rings we use for Total Seal, I love Seal Power. We use them a lot on men, a lot of stuff, especially restoration. I mean, they have rings for just about everything. On my performance end of our compressed air engine, the 383 stroker we just finished today, it's a Total Seal ring. And it's going to be my go-to ring on their performance. I love Total Seal. They make a great product. They have great people that you can talk to and ask. And let them help you out with the ring end gap and the right ring when you give them the specifics that you're using. But you shouldn't have issues like that anymore. You should not have to use a big breaker bar in the front. There's something wrong, and you're just going to tear something up. This is advice that Chief, my uncle, always told me, and to this day, I do not vary from this. And if you learn anything else from today's, anything else, no matter what you're doing, you can use this. Every time you put one bolt on, don't let anybody help you, just screwing bolts on. Tighten the son of a biscuits up. Don't just put it on. Put it on, tighten it, or don't put it on. That's another chief saying.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, you're not helping anybody. While all you buds are all around drinking, everybody's putting bolts on, and they all go home, and then you have a bolt come on, you don't know who did it. If you're gonna put a bolt on, pick up a wrench, pick up a torque wrench, and put it on, or you're not helping me. Sorry, am I acting like chief now a little bit? Okay, going back. But every time you put a bolt on, I'm gonna get quiet so we can hear this. If I get quiet so we can hear this, that doesn't make any sense. You go, just get to it. Turn the engine over 2 complete turns every time. I put the mains on, I turn the motor over. At the point that there's a problem, you know exactly when the problem is. Okay, put it on. I start torquing my mains. Boy, you'll know exactly it feels a little tighter now. Loosen up those mains. You know your problem. Not when the motor's all assembled and, oh my God, what could be the problem? You may have 8 problems. So Chief always said, and to this day, like I said, this will save you. Save you. I don't care if you're working on a washer and dryer, you're working on a bicycle, whatever you're working on. Every part that you put on, rotate it. You got the seal of approval? Go on. Now I'm putting the timing chain on. Tie the 3 bolts on, rotate it. Put the timing cover on. Aftermarket parts may all work by themselves. And if I have a stock Chevy and I have this aftermarket timing cover, it's made to, if I pull this off and put it on, more than likely, it's going to go on. But now, we found this out in this 383 stroker. We didn't find this out because I already know, but this was an example of this 383 stroker. While that part can replace a stock timing cover, now, I replaced the timing cover, I replaced the harmonic balancer, I replaced the timing tab, I put a double roller chain and gear on. Wow, put them all on. There's the interference problems. These guys aren't talking to each other. Is Chloe's timing chain and gears, are they talking to every manufacturer that makes a timing cover? No. They're making sure that it clears a factory timing cover, or there's a note that says will not clear a factory timing cover. So every part that you put on may work individually. It may work for your buddy. He goes, well, I used that problem. There wasn't a problem. But your combination is different than everybody else's. I doubt that everybody else has the same combination. But like I always say, don't go. No, I have the same combination. I read the Hot Rod magazine and built the same thing they did. You don't know what they did when they were assembling that motor. Put the cover on and then pull it back off and grind and clearance. So let's get back to your 390 and know it shouldn't be that tight. And unfortunately, it's already all assembled. I would, because I would rather find something before. Here's another chief saying, there's something wrong. You feel it, right? That feeling? Embrace that feeling. That's your friend, right? So start to learn that feeling. After a while, you may learn, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. That feeling is always wrong. Well, you learned that. But for the most part, that feeling, it's got common sense, but I don't, me, I've said this before, common sense is different to all people. If I grew up by a railroad track, I feel a vibration on my feet, I move because generally a train is coming next. If I never grew up by a railroad track, I may stand there going, what is that? And I'm gone. So common sense, I try never to say use your common sense because everybody else has different common sense. But that feeling, generally, if people will start to go in, you normally had that feeling. I broke. I didn't listen to my feeling. I knew something was telling me. I didn't listen. Well, guess what? An hour and a half later, listen to your feelings. So even if you're just getting started, there's that feeling that you get. Start to listen to that feeling. There's usually a reason for it. You feel like, man, the book says 70 pounds. And right after about 60, it was doing great. All of a sudden, it got softer. But I'm going to follow the book and break that bolt. No, that feeling was telling you wrong. There's something different. Generally, I find the most common thing that people come in there, that was inch pounds. That wasn't 112 foot-pounds. That was inch pounds. So take your inch pounds, divide it by 12. That's your foot-pounds. I didn't go to school. Don't ask me for math questions. All right. So I don't know about the three. That's not right. There's something wrong. Me, what I would do if it's on an engine stand, it kind of is, it's terrible to go backwards. But that feeling, you're going to get it in the vehicle. Is it easier to go backwards when you're draining coolant, draining oil, pulling it back out? If it's on an engine stand, what I would do if it was me is I would reverse it. Pull the valve covers off and maybe pull the rockers off. The rockers, get the rockers off so there's no valves opening. And see, oh, okay, now you know where it's at. No, it's still tight. And, you don't necessarily have to pull the heads off, but you got to pull the turn it upside down and then pull the pan. The rods are real easy because the rods should move sideways. Okay, so the connecting rods, if the pan is off and there's two rods next to each other, there's a side clearance. What my uncle would always do when I started learning and I was assembling motors, and I tell him, I say, Chief, it's ready to bag. He'd come over, and Chief had a little ball peen hammer, and he would just tap all the rods, and just the way they sounded. But you can slide the rods back and forth. Back in the day, they were tighter, and sometimes they didn't slide. They actually were that tight, and Chief would just hit them back and forth. And the way they sounded and they moved, dink, dink, nope, that rod is too tight. Pull it apart, that rod was too tight. Just got it all the time by the listening of it. But you should be able to pull the pan and move the rods back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It's not a rods. If you can't move the rods back and forth, and then you're going to go, Danny said, Chief said, get a ball peen hammer and tap them back and forth, and they do move, there's your spot. There it is right there. The rod bearings are too tight. But if they all move, good. The rod bearings are okay. Now you're going to have to go to your mains one at a time. Not a problem. Go to one, break it loose, turn the motor over 2 times, and keep going. You will find it. Unfortunately, you got to go backwards now. You may have to pull the timing chain off and turn it over with no cam. Maybe the cam is tight. A lot of the older motors, the cam bores weren't perfect. They didn't hit the hole just right. So a lot of times cams had to be fitted. When you put a new set of cam bearings in and you go put the cam in there, it don't go in. Don't do what I've seen people do. Take a hammer and it went in. Well, you stretch your chain out by the time you got it to finally break loose or burn up a cam. The proper way is to fit the cam. What my Uncle Chief would do is take an old cam, cut some slots in the cam with the wheel. We would cut slots in the cam at a 45-degree angle in an old camshaft. So you cut a slot in it, and then you relieve one side of it. So the slot's cut, and you get rid of a little bit of a spot here. Put the cam in, little WD-40, and let it line bore the cam bearings out. Unless you just tight a little bit, and you can work that spot with a blade. They actually had a scraper. Don't be scared. Back in the day, you used to have to scrape bearings. They were Babbitt. They were soft, they were metal. You a lot of times had to scrape bearings. If you can't find an old school bearing scraper, a brand new razor blade works perfect. Okay. Whew. I'm on a roll. I don't know if
You
I'm on a
are
roll.
on a roll, but
Okay.
we are also right up at an hour.
We're at 1 hour. So Lewis,
Lewis is saying, gotta run, piece and assembly grease.
piece and
Lewis.
assembly grease, Lewis.
And the
I'll have an
timing
answer
is
for you.
actually impeccable, because it's time to say piece and assembly grease.
Okay, so I guess it is time to say piece and assembly grease. It has been an hour, right at 1 minute. It'll be an hour. I did lose a little bit of time in the beginning, and a little bit because of the battery. So if anybody has something that I didn't say, infamy. Bye. I hope that answered about the 4.3. Like I said, I love them. I wouldn't be building a hot vapor engine which builds tons of torque if it wasn't a good platform. Dave Johnson on your oil pan. Oh, that's right. The oil pan's going to be rear. You don't have to put a tube. Don't put an extra tube to the front sump. Isn't that kind of weird how Ford used double sumps? And how do you get all the oil out of there? That's just a Ford thing. Embrace it and just move on with it. But no, I always like my pickup in the rear. Stop it, people. We ain't going there. Acceleration. Oh, this is a Chevy Ford thing. It may have started a whole different subject. Where do you like your pickup, in the rear and the front? All right, keep them coming.
That's kind of like, is it a wet or dry sump?
Is it a wet or dry sump? Yes.
Again, we're right at an hour. Dave Johnson, really want to tell your wife we're thinking of her. I hope things work out well. Everybody, thanks so much for joining us. And as we say, Solis Navidad, Solis Año Nuevo. For the rest of y'all, that's Feliz Año Nuevo, which means Happy New Year. We're really glad y'all could join us.
And Hurtin' Faye's on the way right now to All Girls Garage, but I'll let her know.
And yeah, we are planning to do
yes.
Another live stream, one with Danny and Faye later on this month.
When she gets back from her.
I've written down the date. Sorry you didn't do it.
We'll let you know on next Friday's live stream the date. We're doing a January 1 with Faye. She looked at the schedule and she's been dying to just come back in and be home. But to do a live stream, like live stream, we have a good time doing live streams. We just go, we go all over the place. But we have one on Shake the Schedule, and we have one set for this month. We'll post it. We'll post it. Take care, everybody. Peace and assembly grease. Thanks for all the questions. I'm glad that y'all didn't mind all the issues. For the people that maybe not have started at the beginning, sorry for that dead space. I'll get better. I say that. Peace and assembly grease, everybody, and we'll see you next Friday.